being an activist, but what do you say to your critics?
Again, you're being an activist. I am not.
That's not appropriate, sir.
Who are you with? What's your name?
That's an appropriate question for you to ask.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3?
You're a stupid son of a bitch.
Good morning, Liberty lovers, Liberty curious, and anyone else tuning in to Friendly Fire. If you're watching live, then let me especially thank you for tuning in so early. The show is dedicated to interviewing libertarian candidates running for office and only libertarian candidates. As the name suggests, candidates will be asked some tough questions, but as a fellow libertarian, I'm not here to make them look foolish or fail. I'm simply raising the bar for interviewing candidates, as well as the expectation that we have for candidates. The Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the United States and the only viable option to compete with the big two. In this episode, I bring on Stephen Nekhaila, chair of the Libertarian Party of Florida, who previously ran for Key West City Commissioner District 4. With that, let's go ahead and bring Stephen in.
Stephen. How you doing, DL?
Good. How are you?
Good. I feel like I should have brought a suit and tie.
Well, I'm just trying to raise the bar on my end, and the race has passed, so you're in good luck. Plus, you're in the Keys, man. Like, isn't it supposed to be chill down there, like flip flops and shorts?
It is. I'm actually in flip flops and shorts right now, and just getting ready for my day here. Caught me a little bit early. It's usually the time I wake up, but with the baby, it starts to change what time you actually wake up instead of what time you want to wake up.
Right.
But no,
it'll change a lot more.
Oh, I could imagine. But Key West is a very interesting place to do politics because we're not like everybody else. You really can't rely on certain metrics or things or ideology or partisanship because it's a very strange place. I had a buddy of mine joking, kind of half joking, but kind of not. He goes, there's one thing that's going to hurt you in this race. I go, what's that? He goes, you don't have any felonies. I go, I can fix that right now.
So did you?
I don't. Not yet. Actually, nothing that I'm convicted for. I like to commit the average American commits 3 felonies per day. I like to commit a few more just in case somebody's not pulling their own weight.
I got you. Fair enough.
No, but in all seriousness, Key West definitely is an interesting place to get into politics because of the unique nature of the people that live down here, and it's very factional. You've got the Conks, you've got the Yankees, you've got sort of the folks in between. There really is a fight for the heart and soul of Key West right now, in my opinion. You've got a lot of folks that are moving in that are very wealthy, that have the money, that aren't necessarily investing down here. They're buying property down here. They might live here 6 months out of the year. They live in New York, they live in New Jersey, live wherever else. So they're going to vote in a very specific way compared to the folks that live here year round. Right. Compared to the folks that are 4th generation, 5th generation here. Now I'm, I guess, a 1st generation. My family moved down, I guess 2nd generation. Moved down from Jersey, of course, of all places. Back in the day, I lived in the Upper Keys. Moved down here about 8 years ago. My daughter is a true conch. She was born down here in Lower Keys Medical. So if you're born down here, they consider you a saltwater conch. If you move down here, you're considered a freshwater conch. Key West is a very interesting place, and traditionally has always been somewhat suspicious of outsiders, so to speak. It's just the nature of the community. It's a very tight-knit community. The Florida Keys in general has always been very tight-knit. The folks that have grew up down here, and I personally believe if you move down here, if you get involved down here, man, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't belong here. But there's definitely divide in the community. Key West is a place that, or I should say Monroe County is a place that shut down during the COVID lockdowns of 2020. And to be quite honest with you, I think Key West would still be limited in many regards if it wasn't for some of the reopening. But we did literally shut down and for about 2 months in 2020, and you weren't allowed in the Keys unless you knew somebody here or you were here making some kind of delivery or on business. Actually, you couldn't even you had to either work down here or live down here. If you were a family member or whatever, it didn't matter. So this political tide has changed quite a bit. It's very interesting. We also have a lot of environmental concerns with the reefs and the environment, also sea level rise. But our biggest issues down here are the housing crisis. you just can't afford to live down here anymore, and the prices have gone up even higher in the last 2 years. The price of electricity has doubled faster than the national average because of our location, and everything else down here is more expensive because it has to get trucked down. So my campaign was really a cost of living campaign, and really a blue collar campaign, and it was a very interesting experience for me, and I'd love to talk more about it.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in then. So I was checking some things out, and a while back, a Keys News article had this to say, and it said Nekhaila, owner of both the Searstown and Duval Street Wendy's locations, said he jumped into the race because he didn't feel that the hospitality industry was getting the representation that it deserved. And then it quotes you saying the commission is mainly occupied by retirees and attorneys, and that you wanted to see business owners and hospitality workers having a voice in city government. So my question right off the bat is, let's talk specifics. How would a voice for business owners and hospitality workers benefit them, or more accurately, what specific needs do people in those communities have in Key West?
That's a good question. Right off the bat, I would say that the industry, our biggest industry down here, is hospitality.
Hmm.
Hospitality and tourism is the number one industry of the Keys. Number two is probably fishing, commercial fishing.
Hmm.
But in Key West, 99% of the time, people come down here for hospitality and tourism. So that's the majority of the workforce down here. That's what we do. And City Hall, they are, like I mentioned, or like it was mentioned in the article, they're retirees. Every single one of them is a retiree or uh, the mayor owns a construction company. The rest are attorneys. But these aren't people that actually work day to day. They're not working shifts. They're not working seasonally. If we shut down, their business is here tomorrow. So they don't really have their finger on the pulse of what it means to actually live and work in Key West. They're very affluent. Um, the folks up there, the majority of them, and there's a disconnect between them and the working class. So in my interactions with City Hall and my interactions talking to them, it was just very evident to me that these people, and good people, many of them I really like, but these folks are just there's too much of a majority of people, actually a complete, not even just a majority, but uh, 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 unanimous amount of people that just aren't representing the majority of Key West. The
Hmm.
majority of Key West is under 40, working class, typically bartenders, servers, managers, you name it, works from the water, what have you. And we just didn't have any representation up there whatsoever. Key West is very interesting because we go by what's called a Bubba system down here. Basically, Bubba system means, well, I went to school with the sheriff, and his brother is the attorney, and the state attorney was, you know, dated his sister in high school, and yada yada yada. Everybody knows everybody. It's a very tight knit town, so it's a very interesting place to break into. As a matter of fact, we Libertarian Party of the Florida Keys fought against the taxi companies when they were going against Uber and Lyft and trying to keep them illegal, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, I think the city I guess it's a smart thing. They just said, look, there's legislation coming down the pipe in the state. We're just going to let that clear and go with whatever that says. Although I wish that would have been a little bit more forward because they're obviously doing it for votes. This was back in about 2015 or so. The room was packed with about 100 people that were all taxi drivers and their family members. And Key West has a very corrupt taxi medallion system, or used to, where
Hmm.
only certain people could. It was like a liquor license, have their
Mm.
taxis, and anybody else from the outside you weren't allowed to drive here, etc. So they're very upset about Uber and Lyft. That's just one example. We live in a very protectionist type of place. And quite frankly, we do live in a bubble. We live on a metaphorical and a literal island. So politics down here tends to operate that way. And in some respects, I think that could be a good thing because we are insulated from some of the stuff that happens outside the country, and it makes for a very special place to live. But it also is very interesting when it comes to how things are run and done down here because we are so insulated. The politicians think they can get away with a lot more than perhaps they would think they can get away with in other places. So circling back to it, yeah, I think what does it look like to represent the folks down here? I think it's putting the working class first. It's looking at all the people, not just some of the people on top or some of the people in certain groups, whether they're a conch or they're out of towners or whatever. Just saying, look, this is what we got. This is what the market has brought us to. This is what we're going to support. And quite frankly, we don't need city government to set in the direction of the city. We just need them to keep the lights on and run the utilities. And I think that gets lost on people when they run for city government. We don't need a grand executive vision for the city. We just need to keep the maintenance done and keep the spirit of the city the same. And I think the spirit of the city is decided by the people, not by the government.
Gotcha. It's kind of interesting that you mentioned that the taxis had shown up in force, and a lot of those people live and work there, have family members that live and work there. But isn't the same, doesn't that hold true for potential Uber and Lyft drivers as well? I mean, aren't most of those, at least now, people that live and work in the Keys as well, or do you see a lot of people from outside of the Keys?
I would say most of the folks that are down here, 90% of them are from Key West and the Keys.
Mhm.
It was funny because during the taxi driver's spiel, after I gave my speech, I basically said, look, we're going to ban the automobile and go back to the horse and buggy because we don't like innovation. That seems like an odd
Right.
reason to not want taxi drivers, because my generation, when we go drinking, we want to pull out our phone and hail a Uber or hail a Lyft and just press the button. Boom, there you go.
Right.
And so, yeah, a majority of the folks are from down here, and they make good money driving Uber and Lyft, because I remember calling taxi companies back in the day, and we'd be waiting 20, 30 minutes for a taxi.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we had no idea when they were going to show up. They were very rude. The taxis were dirty. They usually just offer you a lot of drugs, which, it's just not very professional. And that was what the majority of the taxis were down here. Once Uber and Lyft started coming in, they were forced to compete, and for the first time, they're actually forced to improve.
Hmm.
And that's the point that I made. I said, look, I'm a Wendy's franchisee. My family's in the Wendy's business. I say, if McDonald's or Burger King decides to come down, I don't say, hey, City Hall, we need to make sure only Wendy's can operate in Key West. Says, no, everything needs to be fair. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. Nothing should be protected.
Right.
It's all open to market forces. If you're good, you adapt. If you're good, you survive. Worst comes to worst, you lose a piece of the pie. But essentially, the worry was, oh well, these taxi drivers or these Uber and Lyft drivers are going to come down from Miami. They're going to hit the mailman. They're going to hit your daughter. When my husband had a heart attack, a taxi took him to the hospital. Just ridiculous excuses to try to protect
Right.
the taxi industry. And I guarantee you, during that 2 hours of City Hall time, you couldn't find a taxi that during those 2 hours, because they were all at City Hall. Literally, it was parked outside taxis. I mean, it was really quite the show. It really opened my eyes up to just how impressionable a city council is,
Right.
and I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over again. If you just get like 4 or 5 buddies and go to City Hall and just hammer them for 3 minutes each,
Hmm.
especially if you're the only people that actually care about the item on the agenda, more than likely you're gonna scare city council into approving your policy on that agenda item, because city councils tend to be very impressionable when voters show up in person. They're not going to go and do a straw poll of all the citizens. They probably know better, but they know that there's a difference between who shows up and who's just a political bloc willing to vote for or against you. And especially in a small town where everybody has friends, they
Hmm.
know people are impressionable. So it was a very interesting experience.
Got it. So, speaking of being a business owner and a franchisee of Wendy's, you are a business owner and you're also the chair of the Libertarian Party of Florida. So, just a reminder, that is not to you, but to just listeners in general, that's the third largest party in the country. So, what I'm curious is, how did you intend to balance all of those responsibilities? Had you well, this last election, let's be clear, was just the primary, but had you won the primary and then the following November election, or would you have needed to scale back on something?
DL, it's a great question. One that in the past, people have always asked me, Stephen, you're a business owner. You're doing a lot. You are looking to run for whatever position it was, from from treasurer to chair to LNC, people have always thrown at me, "Oh, you don't have enough time. You know, he doesn't have enough time. Yada yada yada." I personally believe in making time. I personally believe in you can wake up an hour earlier. You can budget your time better. You can not
Mhm.
spend so much time on social media. There's always time. We always find excuses. I've been working out for a decade. Everyone always hits me with the excuse, "Oh man, you know, you look great," or "I would like to go to the gym more." And I just don't have the time. And I always tell them, "Look, you know, you can make the time. Like time is all around you. It's just a matter of budgeting it
Mhm.
and turning it into something useful." There's 24 hours in the day. You know, we need maybe 6 to 8 hours to sleep. In between that, there's no excuse not to get everything you can need to get done. People just, in my opinion, typically they don't know how to budget time, and they like to have free time, which is really just an excuse to have time for Netflix or binge eating or sleeping in when it could be used
Mhm.
for something useful. Now that I've got my 7-month-old baby girl, which is the biggest blessing of my life, yeah, I mean it's a lot tougher now because certainly the lack of sleep and everything else plays a toll. But even between that, I was still able to run a campaign. It took a lot of my time, but it didn't take all of my time because I
Mhm.
was able to make time. And my wife, she's extremely supportive. She's very willing to take the slack, and God bless her because my baby was only maybe 4 months old when the campaign started back in June.
Ooh,
So
tough.
so it's she was a real trooper, and I
Mhm.
think it's definitely a mixed blessing when it comes to not moving on to the general, because it definitely gives me just more focus, I would say,
Mhm.
on my family. It just allows me to kind of squeeze more bandwidth into whatever else I have going on, but I think there was always I think I always was able to somehow make time for everything.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like today marks the first day that I started getting up an hour earlier. And for the folks that are listening and watching, what that means is 5 a.m., not 6 a.m. And the reason is because, I was kind of thinking about it the other day, and between the hours of about 8 and 10 are some of the most hectic for me because that's when my son gets up. That's when my wife is getting ready. Everybody's having breakfast. We're figuring out, who's going to go where. Sometimes he needs to go somewhere. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes my wife's going somewhere specific. So I was like, you guys are interrupting my time, my morning time, which I get up and I use it to do things like meditate or maybe do a little bit of exercise or, kind of just prepare myself for the day. Sometimes I like to just come down and sit and look outside at the lake and just kind of sit there and just kind of use that to kind of mentally prepare for all the, all the pulls on my attention throughout the day. So I agree with you. You just got to do it. You just got to say, you know what, this is going to happen, and it's unfortunate because I tend to be more of a night owl. Well, maybe not so much these days. I guess I'm kind of making that shift from being a night owl to now I'm getting up. You know, I guess 2 hours early. I guess at this point.
Are you going to continue waking up at 5 a.m. When
Uh,
a fallback occurs, when the times change?
so the winter, if you will be tough because I I tend not, especially when it gets cold. And up here, cold could mean like 50 degrees. Like that's like I'm practically
That's cold for us
freezing.
down here.
Like I'm shivering. I'm like looking for a goose down jacket. Like it's awful. And I tend to not want to get out of bed in the morning because the bed is nice and warm and comfy. And getting out, it just feels cold. Just the air just feels cold, even if you're running the heater. So it'll be a test. It will. But if I start now, maybe I will be in a good habit by then. So we'll see. We'll see how long I can continue this.
Marcus Aurelius, I think it's how I pronounce his name. He was a king like 2,000 years ago or something.
Hmm.
And I think he was a king of Rome or something like that. He wrote a book called Meditations, and it was
Hmm.
just his personal book, personal writings to himself about, what makes a good king, and just it was just kind of a disparate book about information of wisdom and of his meditations. And one of the things he says is that it's so hard to wake up in the morning because your sheets are so heavy and warm. And he was a king, and this was 2,000 years ago. And we have the same problems even today. So
Right.
there's no man so strong or so average, I suppose, that doesn't have the same issues. It's a universal issue. I think it's just a testament to the will
Hmm.
to wake up early in the morning and uh, sharpen your sword, so to speak, by repeating the same habit over and over again. So I really commend you on that. Um, Before the baby, I was always waking up a little bit more consistently. I still try to wake up somewhat consistently now, at
It's
least
tough.
7:30. I was waking up at 6:30. It's just the lack of sleep throughout the night.
Right.
Sometimes I
Yep.
try to get as much as I can. But I always hated when I would get my sleeping schedule just perfect, and I'd be waking up at 5:30 or 6:30 to go to the gym, and then daylight savings time would kick in, and I'd be either waking up an hour earlier or waking up an hour later, and I'm like, man, this screws up everything. I just had it
Right.
perfect,
Yep.
and it would take me a couple weeks to adjust. And I just think daylight savings time is the most terrible thing in the world and the most useless thing in the world, because the sun is always shining in the Keys and in Florida, so I never really understood the point.
Right.
And I think it actually passed Florida State House and Legislature that they wanted to get rid of it, but it just has to go through Congress now because it's a federal issue. And I just
Right.
think it's just one more thing I just really hate
Right.
bureaucracy. I mean, out of all the things the government does, I think that's what I take the most personally is just,
Right.
changing the time we have to wake up in the morning. It's like out of all the things, man, they have to control the time.
Right.
That
No.
protects my sleep.
No, I hear you. And I don't want to, I don't want to get you all nervous here, but I know my son liked to pretend
Mm.
like he was daylight savings time, because he would get into a routine and then I would kind of get into that routine. And no sooner did I get into the routine, he would switch his sleep schedule. And then I would have to, and then, everything was all messed up for me because, he was getting up an hour earlier or something like that.
Mm.
And I tend not to sleep that much anyway, somewhere between like 6 and 7 hours at most. Sometimes 5, just depends on, how things are going. Am I exercising regularly and whatnot. And he was making it challenging even for me, because I'm like, look, man, I'm already only getting 6 hours of sleep, and then you wake up twice in the night, and then you wake up an hour early. Come on, man. I'm gonna remember this when you get older, when you're 15.
Oh
Like,
yeah, just
remember all those times that you woke daddy up? Go out and do the yard. So,
exactly. Yeah, I tell my wife, like, once she's 18, she doesn't have to buy a new carpet and this and that, because yeah, babies put
right.
you through the ringer, but
So,
they're a blessing.
so basically, what you would end up doing is just making it happen. You're like, look, I can do this, I can do this, and I can find time to make this happen. And you did. You found time for what you wanted to accomplish.
I think that's the only way. As someone who's a chairman of the Libertarian Party of Florida, a business owner, I oversee 10 businesses, 10 different locations,
Hmm.
including a full service restaurant uh, and another franchise. Someone who's on the Libertarian National Committee,
Hmm.
someone who likes to work out, someone who likes to have a social life, someone who has a family. To balance all these things, it is tough. But I also think I have a personality quirk where I don't like being bored,
Hmm.
so it kind of works out in my favor. I also do stuff for emergency services down here in the Florida Keys. I do volunteer work for emergency services. And I've just got a lot of hobbies. I've got other things that I like to do. So I do, shooting. I like to go to shooting classes. I like to, just study a lot. And so I don't like being idle. For my father, I just don't, I don't like being bored. So
Right.
whatever I can fill my schedule up with as much as possible, I actually like it. Um, and I think that's one of those things that just kind of allows me to do everything I do, because I'm just constantly occupied. And as they say, you turn mountains into molehills. So eventually, once you reach this obstacle, you feel like, okay, what's the next bigger thing I can do? And
Hmm.
for me, it's always been sort of a natural progression in politics. So when I decided to run for office, it just seemed like the natural thing to do. Same thing as running for chair or LNC. It's like, well, I never decided one day I'm going to be in the chair, one day I'm going to be doing this. Just so happens to happen. And I think the best way to allow things to happen, because it you don't feel like you're jumping into something you're not prepared for. It's a natural extension of of yourself, I guess. It just happens.
All right. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take a quick break, just a couple minutes. I want to promo another candidate real quick, and then we'll be right back to finish up this conversation with you. I know you're on a time frame, so we will try to be mindful of that. So give me just a moment. And so what I want to talk to you guys about, normally I might only promo candidates who have either been on the show or committed to coming on the show. However, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. You may know Chase Oliver, U.S. Senate candidate out of Georgia. He has not yet agreed to come on the show, but that's okay. No candidate is obligated. No harm, no foul there. Chase is legally qualified. He is a legally qualified candidate, which means he will be on the ballot in Georgia come November. But unfortunately, his two opponents, Warnock and Walker, were invited to an upcoming debate on October 14th, and he was not. I took a look at the list of requirements to be on stage. And let me tell you, it was obscene, almost as if it were designed specifically to exclude third-party candidates. So I want to play this clip from Chase. Now, I will be honest, he does not know that I am playing this clip, but that's okay. This show is about raising up and talking about the libertarian candidates and letting people know who's out there and what is going on. So let's hear what Chase had to say about that.
Hey everyone, this is Chase Oliver, the 2022 U.S. Senate candidate, and I'm making this video because the news has just come out that Senator Warnock has accepted the WSAV debate in Savannah for October the 14th to debate Herschel Walker. Now, I have not been invited to this debate, and I would like to be included for one reason, really. I'm on the ballot. If you're on the ballot, you should be on the debate stage. Voters should have an opportunity to see all of the candidates who are on the ballot debate one another, to have discourse, and to really get a glimpse of who it is that's running for these offices. If you believe in inclusivity, if you want to preserve democracy, you should really have all of the candidates who are involved in the process involved in the debate. If you agree with me, please contact WSAV. The details will be in the comments below to get in touch with them and let them know that you want to have an inclusive U.S. Senate debate. Thank you.
All right. So he is on the ballot and he has not been invited to the debate. So I will put a link in the comments where you can go and you can find the post on his website and even some links to WSAV. That's the channel that is hosting the debate. And I want you to go out and I want you to raise some noise because this is a fellow libertarian candidate. And whatever happens to one libertarian candidate can possibly happen to another. And we want to make sure that we support our candidates who are working hard to bring liberty about, whatever state they're from. Let's bring back Stephen. All right, Stephen, there you are, back again. So let's continue on here. I checked the primary results, and you received almost 18% of the vote. So do you believe that number, that percentage, was a win for you?
Well, I don't know if I'd call it a win.
Okay.
But I definitely think it was progress. I learned a lot. I was going for the gold. I was going for a victory, to be quite honest. But it was an interesting race because I'll just go down the list there. Ryan Barwick, he's a local liquor salesman. Me and him actually became good friends. I actually think I convinced him he's a libertarian because, man, he talks like one, and I think I did convert him. Lizette Cuervo-Carey, she's a local. She's a conch, multiple generations. She grew up here. She knows a lot of folks. Kim Highsmith, she is more of a partisan Democrat, and of course, I'm a libertarian in the race and sort of the newcomer, and so, it was very interesting. I don't want to say it was a complete defeat because I really hustled to get that 18%. Coming out of nowhere, since both the other candidates, I know Kim Highsmith, her husband Bobby Highsmith was on the school board. She got a lot of Democratic Party support, so she had a lot going for her in this race. Carrie, who I've actually endorsed, very nice lady. All the candidates are very nice. I respect everybody in this race. I think we were a lot closer as candidates just because we were in the same situation, even though we're running against each other. I think we have a lot of mutual respect for one another. Carrie, conch, like I mentioned, and she knows a lot of folks, and she's been in the community for a very long time. And so I think the results are interesting. I was expecting a little bit more, obviously. I was hoping to make it to the runoff, but I knew it was going to be close, and I wasn't really sure how it was going to play out. And in most races, you you probably can kind of tell how things are going to go. We did some polling, and my name recognition was about tied with Kim Highsmith, Key West wide. Lizette's was really far up there. Ryan's was back underneath all of us. So, it was kind of interesting to kind of guess, okay, where are things going to land? But, the best poll is election day. And,
Right.
quite frankly, I went from 0 to 18%, I think, just by being out there, raising funds, knocking on doors. There's about 1,500 households in District 4. I knocked on about easily 1,000 to 1,200 of them. I did a lot of door knocking. I did a lot of mail. I did a lot of radio, social media, a lot of money on Facebook. Recognition was definitely that. I I spent most of my time on, because U.S. name recognition, not just in your district, every pretty much half the campaigns citywide, to be completely honest, because people talk and everything else. So, one thing I would do differently in the future is, honestly, instead of just campaigning in the district, I would campaign citywide. I would try to hit the entire city every way I can. And I did that some with radio and Facebook and newspaper and stuff like that. But, I even sending out mailers or something, getting teams to door knock. You almost have to start a year ahead of time, I think. And this is what I would have done differently. So I learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot. But I do think that, in ways, the real victory, in my opinion, isn't just from the polling numbers. But the real victory for me, a personal victory, is getting my policies pushed forward, because I have been speaking to my opponents, and we had some conversations after the race, and both Kim and Lizette, and quite and they're interested in taking some of my policy positions. And one of the things I noticed as soon as I started campaigning, because I was the first person to come out against the incumbent, Greg Davila, who I actually knew personally and supported him originally, but things changed. I had to run against him. It was nothing personal. It was just politics. And I started talking about affordable housing, what we can do for affordable housing. And I think in Jacksonville County, right up there in your neck of the woods, DL, they actually legalized accessory dwelling units, which are basically tiny homes to put in your backyard or on your property. Jacksonville County said they can build or DeVal County said they can build another 200,000 homes through EUs. Is something I was supporting for Key West. I was also supporting, building on top of commercial real estate in the major shopping centers and around town, and as well as increasing density and height, in order to eke out some extra housing. And my opponents were taking some of these policies on during the race. And I think, as libertarians, sometimes we're not the most electorally successful, although that's changing, and 50% of municipal races were actually winning. So this is kind of recent. In the last few years, we've gone from like 30-40% to 50% plus. So the tides are really changing. We're getting very good at this. But one thing we've always been successful at is pushing policy. And that's something I've been very active in locally, is pushing policy. I've been getting to know a lot of the movers and shakers. And just by campaigning, I mean, to be completely honest with you, DL, like I don't think my opponents really had much of a platform. They're just kind of running because they're locals, or they're people that want to run, or they have backing, but a lot of the times they don't really have a solid platform. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a policy wonk, so I was really in on policy. And my opponents come to me like, hey, you're really smart. You got this to say and that to say. Like, is there anything we could do? I could do differently, or da 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 da. So I can tell you personally that throughout this campaign, my opponents did adopt a lot of my either carte blanche, like either outright or indirectly, my policies. And the city government actually just passed a budget item. They're going to spend $50,000 to get an impact study or a recommendation study, or whatever you want to call it, to look into actually adopting accessory dwelling units. These are conversations I've had with the city attorney and city manager and others. So these are ideas that are becoming more popular, and to me, that's a win, because electorally, for me personally, and I think every campaign has to be judged differently, because not everybody runs to win,
Right.
and that's fine. And I think that's cool. But the stuff getting put forward, I call that a win. And of course, I'll still be involved and still be pushing these policies as much as I can.
Gotcha. I'm reminded of the 2020 presidential um, candidates for the Libertarian Party, and one of them was John Munz, and I think that was a question that he was asked was he had run in a prior race. I don't remember which one it was exactly, but he had run, and somebody asked him. They said, "Okay, well, you didn't win, so why would we want to elect you, vote for you to be our presidential nominee?" And his answer was kind of similar to what you said. He said, "I think in some ways I did have a win because some of the policies that I was advocating for, and I think in his case, some of the policies actually ended up becoming part of legislation, if I recall correctly." So it wasn't even that it was, the next step after adopting some of his ideas is that they were able to work on and get certain legislation accomplished. I don't remember what it was. So I think that's a really good point to make. Is sometimes we got to move the needle a little bit, and you move the needle enough, and then eventually I think 18% becomes 25%, becomes 30%, so on and so forth, and then here you are, running neck and neck in November, right? I think that's kind of how it works. So let me ask you, speaking of Kerry, after the election, you did put your support behind her for November 8th. Now, I believe this is a nonpartisan race, so that makes it more acceptable because I believe legally, at least here in Florida, officers of any party cannot endorse another party member. So let me ask you though, why when you opted to support an opposing candidate, what lesson is there for other candidates in doing this?
Well, it's a good question. I think during a race you can sort of feel out your opponents, and believe me, during the campaign, it's basically war, right? You're basically you're trying to figure out in the fog of war what your opponents are doing. You're trying to get ahead. You're trying to make the right chess moves. But at the end of the day, we're all people. We're all trying to do the right thing, and I think most people run for the right reasons. And I became friends with many of my opponents, and so I think the lesson here is okay. Once you've done all you can, you still want to be a gentleman, or you still want to be a gentlewoman, and be a good sport. And if at the end of the day your idea of participation is, look, I want to engage civically, I'm not done, and quite frankly, one of these people is going to be your representative, so I'm going to be going to them for my policies, for my issues, for all these different things. And I think Lizette Carey, she was probably more closely aligned to me out of the other candidates that besides Ryan. Ryan was probably the most closely aligned with me. I think we just split the vote a little bit on that because he has hospitality with a very similar platform. But Lizette came in second,
Mhm.
and she's also someone who's politically experienced down here and yada yada yada, good support. And I think that our voting base, I think the three of us kind of did split the vote a little bit. So I felt like working class people, the people that I'm trying to help, who most closely aligns with that ideology, and who do I think would be most closely aligned that if I'm going to assist, if I'm going to endorse, if I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm going to basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some advice. I'm going to endorse you, and good luck. I mean, that's all I can do is just say, hey, take my policies. I think she was probably the most closely aligned, and that's why I made the decision to endorse her, because you do build up political capital when you run for office, and I think using it wisely does have an effect, and especially if that person wins, they can say, hey, thanks, you did help me. And my intention is to obviously continue being involved in civil government and building that reputation and rapport with my city council. I know the city attorney, I know the city manager, I know other folks. So even if she doesn't win, I'm still going to say the same thing if Kim Heiss, I mean, my mouth to her ear, for instance. So
Mhm.
the lesson here is, I would say continue your engagement. And obviously, as a state officer, as a chairman, I have to be very careful who I endorse and what that looks like. If this was a partisan race, I wouldn't be saying anything. But it is a nonpartisan race, so it does give me leeway. And especially in a local race like this in Key West, it is interesting because even though it is a nonpartisan election, there are some people that they're only going to vote for Democrats, so they're only going to vote for Republicans. And I've had many people when I knock on the door and they say, "Hey, you're Republican or Democrat?" And I say, "I'm neither."
Right.
I say, "This is my beliefs, and if you like my beliefs, you like my policies, then vote for me. If not, then maybe there's another candidate for you." And I give them the honest spiel, and a lot of times they'll say, "I like you. You got my support." Sometimes they'll say, "I'm sorry, I'm only going to vote for the Republican, or I'm going to vote for the Democrat. And if they don't win, maybe I'll vote for you, or maybe I won't." So for a lot of people, it is partisan, even if it's nonpartisan. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I think at least one of the opponents in this race, one of the ones I did not endorse, made this a very partisan election for her campaign. And I think that's not the right thing to do. People knew I was a libertarian, and but I never went around saying I was necessarily libertarian. I espouse the libertarian ideal, and I think when people find out I'm a libertarian, they really like the ideology and they join. And so, it's interesting because you want to push the party ideology, and I think you want to push the party, but you also have to be careful because you're selling yourself in these nonpartisan races. So I think I kind of did the best of both worlds. I had a lot of people come out to me and say, "Hey, I'm a libertarian now because of you." And
Good.
so you have to be careful, but you also I think in many ways, if you just go out partisan lines, but I made a lot of allies along the way. I think I still was able to kind of walk that fine line. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much in circles, but you can
That's all right.
kind of accomplish both.
Good.
Yeah.
So I know you're short on time here. Just so I want to ask one more question.
Sure.
As the chair of the party and as
Yeah.
somebody who has now run their own political campaign, this is my next question is about you as the chair now. And there has always been a lot of criticism toward the party from candidates. That can be at the state level and also at the national level as well. So what did you learn that you're going to take back to the, as chair to the party and say, you know what, having done it myself, this is what I've learned and how I think I can now make things, improve things for our candidates who are running within the state of Florida?
So, I'll tell you something, DL. One of the biggest things I took away from this race, a lot of times as libertarians, we like to downplay the Libertarian Party. We like to say, "Oh man, the LP doesn't give us any support, yada yada yada," or what have you. I still think there's opportunities there, but I'll tell you what, that I wouldn't be able to get even 18%. I don't know if I would have been able to get even 10% if it wasn't for the Libertarian Party. And I'm talking about the campaign trainings I've gone through that have been put on from national. I'm talking about my network and contacts within the state party, within the national party that I built over the years. I'm talking about local libertarians within Monroe County and Key West. All these things came together because using that network was so helpful to me that I can honestly say, and this is something I think your viewers will find interesting. One of my opponents used a local firm, and the folks in that firm, it was a media company, but they used to work for a DC-based political firm that helped Democratic candidates. They ran a very sophisticated campaign. They knew how to run things. She spent a lot of her time and money with this organization in order to get ahead. I only had my network of friends within the Libertarian Party who were able to help me run a very sophisticated campaign using very high-level tools that I think really helped tremendously. And I'm talking about, running text messages. I'm talking about getting data, getting maps, getting, all these tools and things that you usually don't see on these local elections because most people don't know how to use it or don't have the political acumen to even know these tools exist. And so I think that all that helped so much. And I was able to ask for advice, and I was able to talk to folks, and I was able to get a sounding board off people. So I think what we really need to do as a Libertarian Party of Florida and as chairman, when I come back and I see, man, wow, these candidates put so much of their lifetime and energy and finances into running these races. God bless them, because it's not easy. The best thing we can do is educate, provide logistical support and training. And I actually don't think financial support is necessarily, now financial support would be great, don't get me wrong. Now we can't donate to nonpartisan elections, but what we can do is prepare our members to go out and run for races through education, through mentorship, through support during the race, before the race, in preparation, etc. And learning how to fundraise, because I was able to fundraise. I was the second highest. I was the second highest in contributions in my campaign, in my race. So I did very well fundraising wise, and I did that through I got a lot of support from libertarians. I got a lot of support locals, building up my brand locally. People, they threw money at me because they knew what I was about. And I don't think the financial piece is it's as important as anything else, but I don't think that's the number one way we can actually support our candidates right now. With what we have, I think given the party's resources, just doing more in the off years and the early opening season to campaigning, helping them build campaign plans. I had my campaign plan built and everything else, and giving that weekly support. I think those would be the biggest pieces of the puzzle that we can provide. And to be honest, DL, I think a strong affiliate matters most. When you have people on the ground, you've got friends that are willing to knock on doors. Holy smokes, that is so valuable. So many people are not willing to go help you. And I'll tell you what, and I'm not knocking against them, but to go out in 98-degree heat with 100% humidity and help knock on doors or give money to or do whatever, having good libertarians and good friends and your local affiliate, man, that is probably worth the most out of more than any check. Is just having your network. And I really do believe when it comes to campaigning, your network is your net worth. So one of the most valuable things we have are county affiliates. Building those up, man, I'm telling you, it's worth its weight in gold. So yeah, don't we have something very valuable. I don't think I even appreciated it as much until I ran for office, but the Libertarian Party, utilizing your network is just humongous. And just circling back, building strong affiliates, training. I think there's more we can do in terms of training. I think those are the two biggest things we could really provide. Whatever resources we have and tools we have at the national level or state level when it comes to data and stuff like that. I think those are going to be some things I'm going to be pushing forward come next season, especially for the new EC as they come in April, to say, look, these are definitely the things that we need to work on. By the way, I do plan on, after this term is up, to remain on the board there's actually a position for past chairs to stay on in an advisory role. And I definitely want to continue supporting the party in that capacity when the time comes. So
awesome. All right. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions that I have. Do you have any final words before I go ahead and close the show out?
Thanks for having me on. And I love the production value of the show. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. And please give the Jacksonville boys my best wishes. Those guys are running an amazing campaign. I think their election's in March. So for anybody listening, please, we've got libertarians on the ballot in March, which is going to be slow season for politics. So give them your time and attention. Check them out. They're doing really amazing things. And I really love what you guys are doing up there. So hopefully I can make it in October. We'll see. I might be able to fly out. But for those of you guys watching that aren't already members of the LPF, head over to lpf.org. Sign up as a member. It's free. Please, if you can, your monthly donations go a very long way. We're trying to get 100 members to donate $25 or more per month. So if you're willing to donate $25, it goes to a good cause, and we can do more of what you want us to do, and that includes supporting candidates. So thanks for having me on, DL. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I thank you for coming on, and have a good day. Looks like the sun's coming up over there.
Amen.
All right. Have a good one. All right, folks. That's the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. And next week, I want you to tune in because I'm bringing on Kyle Garrison, Libertarian candidate for Alabama State Senate District 6. See if I can pull this picture up of Kyle so that you know exactly who will be coming up. I don't know if I have it quite ready. Let's see what we can do here really quickly. All right, we're going to get this. I'm going to have to get on top of that production manager here. He's just not doing his job here. I don't know what's going on with that guy, but whatever. All right, so there we go. We got a picture of Kyle, and this is Kyle Garrison looking pretty tough. So I think he'll be able to handle friendly fire come next week, but we'll see. But he will be on the show next week. And again, he is running for Alabama State Senate District 6. That's all for this week. I want you to find other episodes at libertydad.com and archived video episodes at youtube.libertydad.com. You can also connect with me at Liberty Dad on Facebook, Liberty Dad Pod on Twitter, or email to libertydadpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. Have a great week. Catch you next time, and I'm out.